to build on the Math-ology. All right, in order to build on our topic for today, Math-ology, student edition, and of course, we'll have time for questions and answers. So let's get into it. All right, so here are our learning targets for today. So our participants will be able to identify problem-based learning and activities, understand and apply constructivism, and examine and create student-centered approaches. All right, so can anybody tell me who this person is? I know her name is on the screen, but have y'all ever heard of Rita Pearson? This one lady is somebody I really admire, and I always kind of cultivate my students or my teaching around her principle. Let me see who agrees with me. There we go. Yes. So she says, how powerful would our world be if we had kids not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, who had a champion? Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best they can possibly be. Is it tough? Do y'all agree this job is tough? Can I get some help? It is tough, you betcha, but it is not impossible. We can do this. We are educators. We are born to make a difference. And sometimes I have to remind myself as an educator, in order for me to teach my children, I have to make sure I'm in the best condition I can be. So before we start talking about our kids, we have to focus on ourselves first to make sure we're giving our all to our kids, even through the pandemic. All right, so that was just a motivational moment for us as we go in and try to be the best educators that we can. And so again, feel free to interact. If you have anything you want to drop in the comments, I'll make sure I have them up so we can engage together. That's how we want our kids to engage. I want y'all to engage with me. So if you agree to something, if you have a question about something, just drop it in the chat so we can have a conversation. All right, getting to know your students. So this picture was taken this week. We had a social emotional learning week where we got back to the basics. Even though school has already started, we went back to the basics. We got to know our kids again. We got to have fun with them this week. We got to really go back to the basics. So we had hat day. And so the secretary came around. She was like, Miss McDaniel, can I take a picture? And I was like, oh, Miss McDaniel, I want to take a picture with you. I want to take a picture with you. I was like, y'all, come on. What y'all got? How are we gonna pose? So we just, all of us decided to squat and posed it out. So that's the first thing. When we're building our students and when we're trying to make these connections, we need to understand, how do we know our students personally, academically? Because building connection and relationship is the foundation of how we're going to teach, whether it's during the pandemic, whether it was before the pandemic, whether it's going to be after the pandemic. Building the connection and relationship matters in how we're going to teach our students. We must know who we are teaching, where they're from, in order to develop our instructions using problem-based learning, constructivism, and student-based approach. So I thought I was cool. They try to keep me cool. So, I try to stay ahead of the game. So getting to know your students. So first, we got to make sure we're good as educators. Secondly, we got to get to know our students. Who are we teaching? What do they like? So we have to make sure we are cultivating our learning with our children. Some of my babies. So we're going to first talk about problem-based learning. So problem-based learning is a student-centered approach. And then it can be independent. It can be collaborative. You have open-ended questions, real-world experiences, and connective learning. So this is a picture I had to put prior to COVID. We had a picture prior to COVID where So I gave them something to talk about. But when you are creating this problem-based learning, you have to give them expectations. So don't just say, oh, I want you to do this. But what are you expecting out of your students or my kids, as I call them? So the reason why we have problem-based learning, again, it ignites the conversation. It allows real-world communication and roles. Because how many kids say, why are we learning this? What's the purpose of this? Could you tell me why? Why do I need to know this? I get those questions all the time. I'm like, I don't think I need this. So we have to make those connections and make them real-world experiences. It allows them to think critically, even though if they don't want to think critically. And it's useful to any discipline. So from the pre-K level to the high school level to math, science, social studies, and English. And then it builds problem-solving skills and techniques. So all of us need skills and techniques, whether we're waking up in the morning, whether we're doing a math problem, whether what we're trying to decide for dinner. We're always trying to find a problem to solve. All right, any questions so far? Again, make sure you're engaged. If you have a pinpoint, if you agree, give me some love in the chat. If you agree or you disagree, it's okay. Just make sure you respectfully disagree. That's it.
I have a quick question, Ms. McDaniel. How do you make your groups when you're planning for project-based learning?
All right, so based on MAP scores, I use MAP scores as well, and I use an assessment at the beginning of the year. And so I group them based on their levels. Most of the time, I don't like to mix the group initially because I know you'll have one powerhouse in the group try to dictate the whole group. So I try to look at those data enriching sources. We'll use that, sources, in order for me to figure out who's the strongest in this area, who's the strongest in that area. And then from that point, I can group them. And so now that we are dealing with the pandemic, it looks a little different. So they're not just going to be side by side like my students are here. Of course, we have shields at the desk. We have different diffusers in the classrooms to make sure they're safe, make sure they're wearing their masks as well. So it still looks the same way, kind of, but it's a more safety way. Yeah. And then when we were virtual, I would put them in a separate room so I could still pop into each room and have somebody being the teacher of the group. So I would assign the roles so they can make sure, okay, we're on task. So if it's virtual, you still can do it virtual. All right, any other questions? All right, make this interactive. I don't want to be talking to some empty screens here. You know, we felt that maybe 18 months ago, we felt that spirit. All right, so this is just some information, just some sample activities of how you can compare subject-based versus problem-based. And again, I would make sure that this PowerPoint is available to you because I'm not going to read it in detail here. I'm going to make sure this is available to you. All right, so I'm going to skip past so I can give you one that I created. All right, so this kind of start off one of my problem-based learning projects. So this will be my introduction. So again, I'm trying to engage them like, okay, what we got going on today? So I want to draw them in with that engagement in order for them to inquire what's next. So I want you to check out this video and give me a thumbs up to make sure you can hear it on your side once I start the video.
Next into the tank is a kid entrepreneur who wants to help other kids fulfill their entrepreneurial aspiration.
Hi Sharks, my name is Jack Bonneau. I'm the founder and CEO of Jack's Stands and Marketplaces, and I'm from Denver, Colorado.
Hi Sharks, I'm Steve Bonneau. I'm Jack's dad. I work for Jack.
Sharks, I'm seeking $50,000 in exchange for 10% of my company. I'm 10 years old, but when I was 8 years old, I really wanted a Lego set, but it cost $400. The good news was my dad said I could have it.
But he'd have to pay for it with his own money.
So, I did what most of you probably would do. I started my own lemonade stand. After 12 weeks, I made $900 after expenses.
Wow.
Learned some valuable lessons, and yes, I got my Lego Death Star. That experience is exactly why I created Jack's Stands and Marketplaces. Jack's Stands and Marketplaces provides kids and their families opportunities to learn about entrepreneurship, business, financial literacy, while having fun and making some money. We provide everything except their mood and their enthusiasm. Jack's Stands offers kids the opportunity to sell lemonade and other drinks. We offer kids the opportunity to sell more than just lemonade. Jack's Marketplaces provides young entrepreneurs the opportunity to sell their products in authentic and great marketplaces and have kids sell those great products and tell the inspirational stories of these young entrepreneurs.
So, Sharks, our challenge and question to you is, who wants to make money?
While inspiring our nation's youth in entrepreneurship.
So that example will be the opening if I want to have a problem-based project. So this is actually my project that I created. So I use the same introduction, and then the kids are like, "A young boy? What's he doing on TV?" So again, I already have their mind to figure out, okay, what she got us doing? What's going to happen? So that's going to be the intro to our problem-based learning. So again, I'm trying to make it intriguing, making sure they kind of connect to what we're going to do. And so this problem-based learning, I connected it with all four standards, all four subjects, sorry. So with math, ELA, science, and social studies. And so it was like a collaborative effort between the team. And so one thing I said, a group of 5 colleagues, so the colleagues will be their teachers, are looking to invest in the next best invention in the US. They are trying to help you sell the greatest idea with $60,000 at stake for 10% of your company. They're asking for a few requirements. So with these requirements, it incorporates math, ELA, science, and social studies. So this is in the course of a month where each subject area is going to touch on what is required for the project. I know. I was like, yeah, this is a lot, Miss McDaniel. You had time to do all this? Yeah, I did. I thought about it. So again, this gets them to be innovative, to create. It's been some amazing things that they have created, very amazing things that they have created. They have to explain their product. Why is it important? How does it connect to 2 body systems? How does it help it? And then, of course, the math comes in when we talk about the sales price, discounts, the taxes. And of course, they can produce a commercial, a poster, or an advertisement. So again, these are all things that they're used to seeing. How they have to persuade somebody to buy their product. They have to persuade me in order for me to prove their product. So they can't automatically say, "I want to do this." I was like, "How would you persuade me to let you go ahead with this project?" So again, it's just the inquiry. But if you would like a copy of this to modify, just let me know. I'm willing to share. So you can modify at your own cost. You can take out whatever you need. You can add free of cost. Won't charge you. Not today. So again, that's part of one of the problem-based or the project-based learning that I love. And it is so interesting. All right, any questions so far? Let me see. I got a couple chats. Will do. All right, okay, thanks for joining.
Miss McDaniel, I have a question about motivation. How do you motivate students to keep trying? When you tell them, well, how would you sell me on this? When you push them on, well, are you convincing me? What are you using to convince me? How do you keep them motivated to keep trying?
So it starts off with my energy. It starts off with the energy. So for example, I'm going to tell you a real life one, okay? So one of my students said 2 years ago, I was like, "Miss McDaniel, I want to do some glue on edges." Glue on edges. I was like, glue on edges? How you came up with that? What's the issue? Why do we need glue on edges? do you think that's important? I said, So tell me your point. Tell me why we need glue on edges. And so they'll just go into a tangent. So now I'm just inquiring, using my energy to probe. Tell me more. Why did you come up with this? Why did you come up with this? And then it was another example where one student said they wanted to create a machine that fights off bad cells. And so again, they did a whole research project out of that one thing. I was like, so tell me, what's your motivation behind it? And the student said, well, my grandmother had some medical issues. And in order to make her better, I feel that if I created this project or this innovation, it could help her. So again, just getting behind the reason why, or I never try to say, oh, that's a terrible idea. Oh, that's a bad idea. I want to know why. What was your purpose behind it? So just probing and just making sure I make a connection of why. Yep.
I actually had another question while you were talking.
Mhm.
This one is about behavior management. So when you are doing projects like this in your classroom, do you find behavior management to be easier, more difficult, about the same? How do your students respond?
So it goes back to how you started. So the start of it is to set out your expectation. So when I first start anything in my classroom, when I first start out the year, my number one thing is respect. So it's mutual respect. So if you want me to respect you, I need that same respect back. And so it's amazing how my colleagues look at me now like, okay, this same child is different in here than in your class. But when I set out expectations, what I expect from them, they tend to say, okay, I understand. Instead of, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this. I create an expectation. What do they expect from me? And what do I expect from them? And that goes for assignments, that goes for us personally when we're having a conversation. That's what I require. So it's not just me telling them, oh, you do this now. What I expect from you is for you to do this. And then of course I have class leaders. They want to be little teachers. So I was like, okay, you my group manager. So make sure everybody's on task. If you have an issue, come on over to me and I'll handle it. So it's just building that relationship, having that relationship in that first couple of weeks, or getting to understand who your kids are. And that's all the foundation comes from. Because again, a textbook cannot teach classroom management. It cannot. All right, let's see. Any other questions or comments? All right. Again, let this be as engaging as possible. If you got a question, if you got something on your heart, if you don't want everybody to see it, as I tell my students, send me a private message. Direct me. I'm not gonna say it out loud. Send me a private.
I had a comment.
Okay, let me see where you are.
Oh, my video is not on. I'm in
Oh,
trans.
okay.
But yeah, you said if you had something on your heart, girl, why you said that? So, so I was thinking in response to what he just said, also, when you said about creating relationships with the students, if they know you really care about them, they will respond differently. Like if you really care, like let's say if they fall, like whenever my kid, I have kindergarten, okay? So it's easy for me to exaggerate. So if they're like in a chair rocking back, I'm like, I would hate it if you hurt your head and then you couldn't come to school. You'll be sick and I'll be so worried about you, and we start every morning off with a greeting and I give them, I give them a big hug, but that stays here. But they didn't say we can't hug them. So we start off with a big hug and they just know I really truly care about them. So one, those kind of relationships will help you move mountains. And two, with the project-based learning, if it's something that they enjoy, something that they like, then they're going to be more motivated to actually do what they need to do and not to play around.
Mm-hmm. You're right. And what's your name? I couldn't see your name pop up either.
Stephanie.
Okay. Exactly. And then again, this gives them free range to pull in things they like, something that they wish they didn't, wish they had, or something that, to help others. And you can see the compassion coming through their project as well. Just like my student tried to help his grandparent, trying to figure out what's going on. That was good. Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate that. I'm an open book, y'all. I'm telling you, I'm an open book. Open book. All right, so when we talk about, again, all of this is dealing with our students. So again, we have to start with ourselves, build ourselves up, make sure that we are well, make sure we're healthy, make sure we know that we are important, we matter. And then after that, then we can move into our students. So the next thing we're going to talk about when students construct their own learning. So again, this is one of the keys to success. So in order for us to build anything, we must identify what the student already knows. Because if I'm going to teach a concept in math, if they don't know a particular prior standard, why will I teach something that builds on to the prior standard if they don't know? So I have to build on to what they know, because their experience will create what they know. And then it's the keys to delivering my lesson. Because we know that all our students have diverse backgrounds, and we may have one student coming in from Mississippi. We may have a student coming around from the corner from another school, but we have to engage and incorporate what they already know. And so this will be the keys to delivering a great lesson and an inclusive lesson as well. All right, so again, what I did was compare. So anything that I use, if you're a part of any school, make sure you always cite your sources. So again, I use this from the University of Buffalo because I like when they compare the traditional classroom to the constructivist classroom. Because what we do traditionally is not going to work now because everything is changing. So as my teacher was when I was back in school, not that long ago, when I was back in school, it was just like, I'm gonna stand up and teach and you're gonna get what you get. But now you have to incorporate so much into the lesson that our students are interacting, they're learning, they're communicating, they're talking with each other, they're asking questions with each other, they're using their interests to build their knowledge. So we have a different things that we are to have in order to construct the knowledge that they're building in our classrooms. And so one thing in particular, our teacher role is interactive. So sometimes when something is student-based, it's not always necessary for us to lead the conversation. We may give them the topic to start the conversation, but it's for us to support what's happening in their groups or individually. Because a lot of our students, some of my students, they just automatically, just give me the answer. I don't have to search for it. No, I want you to search for it. That's a part of the process. To engage, to determine what is going on, to problem solve. You're going to need it. So again, you could take a look at this. Again, the reference page is there. Once this is shared with you all, you can have it. But make sure you give them credit. So when we talk about the keys of this particular point, so based on studies and research, knowledge is constructed. People learn to learn as they learn. Learning is an active process. So we got to keep building onto what they're learning. Learning is a social activity. So just think about it. Going back to college days, going back to a class that you had personally when you were in college. Tell me how much things do you remember from studying in college? I'll wait on that answer. So again, if you're not constantly using it, talking about it, engaging in it, you're going to lose it. So again, learning is a social activity. We have to engage in our learning. We have to talk about our learning. And the more we talk about it, the more we'll be able to conceptualize it in our brain. Knowledge is personal. Learning exists in the mind, and motivation is the key to learning. So how would I get my kids to get on to this process? And it goes back to Rita Pearson. Everything I try to do, I try to emulate what she has for her children, what she thought was the best way for her children. And again, motivation is key. So again, this came all from the source that's below. I just agreed. I looked at the studies and I agreed to this to be true. All right, any comments, questions, or concerns? Let me know.
So I have a question about how you use assessment in your class. Do you use pre and post assessment? Just hearing constructivism, it's making me think that you guys might test a lot.
Oh no, not test in terms of like I'm gonna sit down and test on paper. But my test is to see whether you can process the information, see whether you can translate the information back to me. So if I were to ask you a question, Ashton, and I was like, okay, what's the answer to this problem? And then I was like, how would you get that answer? So that's a part of an assessment. It doesn't always have to necessarily be on paper, because I get tired of grading paper assessments. And I get tired of seeing my students just sit there like, take this answer. Okay, next. And now 45 minutes done gone by and they just writing. So again, my assessment comes in a conversation, because I can tell whether you know it or not through a conversation. And that's true. Because sometimes if they don't know it, be like, I think the answer is 275, but I don't know how I got it though. I think so. But that engaging conversation, if they got it, they can explain it to everybody in the classroom. All right, any other ways that anybody else has where they assess their students, whether it's pre-K to high school? Any other methods that we can use? As we have some great educators on the line, you can drop them in the chat. Let us know, share the good gems.
Observational checklist.
Okay. And so what does that look like?
It's like a checklist / kind of rubric of what you expect to see or hear them say. Kind of like you said, a conversation, but you're more or less give them a task, like you said, like a task. And then if they, I'm in kindergarten, so, let's say if I want to know if they know the sound of the letter A, then I want them to recognize, I want to know if they recognize the letter A, then I might have some A's on a paper with some B's and C's, and I might ask them, where's the A? And then the next thing I might do, I might have a book and I might say, find the letter A. And, so right while I'm asking them that, I have a little checklist. It might have 3 or 4 things on it. They can identify the letter. They could tell me the sound. They could find, things like that.
Gotcha. Thank you. Is that you again, Stephanie? Or was that somebody else?
It is. I'm sorry. I'm a talker. I really
That's
have to be involved to get, because I'm so tired. If I don't talk, I'm fall asleep. So, I really have to be involved and interactive to actually get all this stuff to soak
Look,
in.
so what's that on the page? Learning is a social activity. So even with adults, we have to engage. And let me tell y'all this, y'all know when it comes to those meeting after school, I'm gonna say this quietly in case y'all got principals and stuff at y'all school. When it comes to those staff meetings, y'all know we got to be engaged or we're going to sleep. So don't tell nobody I told y'all that. So learning is a social activity, especially in those meetings, okay? Just saying. Got to be engaged. That's good. Good information. Anybody else want to add? This is good. All right, so with student learning, centered learning, so again, all of this is involving our students. So again, As educators, we got to make sure we're all right, well rested, make sure our mind is focused, make sure our mind is clear for the day, and then we can proceed on to engaging our students. So with this video, I'm going to show maybe like a minute of student-centered learning. It's about 3 minutes, but I'm just going to shorten it for the time's sake and then continue to talk about our students.
Paint, board, a desk, the homework, the books. The day begins and ends when the bells ring. For centuries now, this has defined what all of us think about school. We have come to believe that this is the one way that students will learn. And with that belief, we have taught all of our students in pretty much the exact same way. But the world has changed, and what it means to be ready to succeed in the future has also changed. That means our model of learning must change. It's happening now, and it needs to happen even more, in more places, for all students, especially for those for whom the current system isn't working. There is strong data that shows we need to rethink learning. Like remodeling a house, we're not just adding a new coat of paint, we're updating the outdated parts and making it more modern and efficient, strengthening what works and fixing what doesn't. Gone are the days when some students can excel and others just get by. Our society needs all kids to excel at high levels. And to make this happen, we need to engage our students like never before. This is student-centered learning.
So again, just that simple engagement. So again, as you're hearing different perspectives, we still go back to the same thing as we're talking about these different learning objectives that we're talking about today. All of this is interchangeable. So we're just, the whole point of it, we're engaging our students. That's what the whole point of it is. We're trying to engage our students. All right, and so when student-centered approaches, it's the students for me. As the little saying said, it's the students for me. So these are some actual footages from some prior classes prior to COVID of how the students were engaged. I had already given them the expectations. I had already laid out what they need to do and how they need to rotate around the room with these different task cards. So we had about 20 task cards, and they knew every 3 minutes we were going to rotate. It doesn't matter whether you got to all 20. If you got to 10, that would have been a great thing. And then once we worked in these groups, they were able to emerge in the conversation. And so again, when I ask them to do things, they want to fulfill my expectations. Because again, I hold them all to a high expectation. Whether they're the roughest, the toughest kid, I try to make sure that they understand if they still don't know, I am there to support them. So also in these student-centered approaches, in these small groups, they are able to ask questions. So instead of them asking in the whole group setting, I can do one-on-one sessions with them. I can engage with them. Even when we were virtual, students, I had another Google Meet room when they were doing independent learning or group assignments. I had one single Google Meet room where it was just me and the students that needed some extra assistance. So student-centered approaches, it allows you to have that one-on-one conversation for our struggling students. Yep, thank you, Ebony, great idea, even for kindergarten. Yes, more, every time you say kindergarten, more blessings to you. It's in the middle for me. I'm just saying, it's in the middle for me. You know, everybody has their gift. So that's your gift. You got it, girl. Go ahead. That's just not for me. You got it. Blessings to all of y'all. Have you ever taught SPED? No. Blessings to you too. Y'all some great people. Yeah, I really love y'all. Y'all some great people. All y'all great. High school, but you know, just saying. Had to put that out there just to let y'all know that. So again, all of this, when we talk about each one of these perspectives, students earn their learning. Oh, somebody have a comment? I heard somebody come on. All right. So students earn their, they own their own learning. So again, making them responsible for the things that they receive, the things that they do. And when we personalize the learning, students become more engaged. All right. Oh, we got somebody coming in. Or maybe, oh, that might be one of those mics. Now, just make sure you monitor your mics. Monitor. Had some slip ups. Okay. All right. And then also, anytime, anywhere with learning. So when we talk about student-centered learning, they become more responsible, they become more engaged, and they don't, well, with middle school, they are not bored. They don't feel like, oh my gosh, she's teaching us again. Oh my gosh, she's talking our head off. So it gives them an opportunity to talk and for us to guide the conversation. Oh, Jessica said, I have a middle school child, so I thank you. You're welcome. You are welcome, Jessica. You mentioned task box. I want to make them. I was wondering how they work. If anyone has done the resource, let me know. All right, so with the world of technology, I went to Teacher Pay Teacher to get me some task cards that align with my my standard, what I needed to do for that day. Because again, if it's already created, I'm going to give them the credit and use their resource. Yes, that's how I live my life. And if it's not created, I'll create it and then I'll pass it on to somebody else. Yep, so task cards, that's what it is. I went to Teacher Pay Teacher, yep, and try to get anything free I can. If I have to pay $2, $3, I will. It works. You are welcome. And then anytime you have those task cards, please make sure you establish the expectations first. So establish how you want them to move. What do you want them to do? How many minutes do you want them to spend on each card? What signal will they have when it's time to rotate? So I would put a timer on the board. Somebody would check the timer. Oh, we have 2 minutes left. And I'll just reset the timer each time. Or I could put 20 minutes on the clock. If it goes down to 17, it's time to move. If it goes down to 15, it's time to move. So again, just making sure they're accountable when they're moving or when they are going to another task. Even if it's on the Chromebook, just make sure it's timely. All right, good engagement. I'm gonna give y'all a grade after this and see what y'all score. I'll give you a grade. Y'all working on an A+. We at the B- level right now, so we'll see how it comes. Y'all questions gonna determine whether y'all get an A at the end or not. All right, so some strategies. So you can use choice boards, jigsaw station centers, where we have here inquiry-based learning. One thing about inquiry-based learning, it really requires the student to think. It really does. Because it is like you give the student a problem and you just there. But like, okay, what do you think? What do you think is gonna happen? How do you think you're gonna solve this problem? So you're literally not giving them any answer to nothing. You're just guiding and asking questions. So that is difficult. But once they get the process, once they know that Ms. Richardson is not gonna back off, once they know that Miss Elizabeth, Miss Jennifer, be like, okay, we're gonna have to deal with this because this is all she's gonna give us. Of course, project-based learning, problem-based learning, flipped classroom. So again, changing up. So again, I don't have to sit here and teach my students all the time. I can flip it and let them become the teachers. All right, let's see. I should not use task cards before my classes before. When I had a large number of resource students, I would make an alternate. Okay, set. Yep, differentiate. There you go, Ashton. Yes, sir. And then I also hear this, like sometimes I hear things in my mind. Some person said, What if we have a lot of kids in our classroom? I heard that person. You ain't said it out loud, but I heard you. What if we have a lot of kids in our classroom? Well, the solution is to that is, well, you can mix it up. So with that plus COVID, you can have stations on your Chromebook. So you can create a virtual platform where you have stations. You can put it in a Google slide where the first slide is your first station. The second slide is your next station. The third slide is the third station. And everybody can essentially be on the same station at the same time. And if you want to put them in groups, you can do that too. If you want them to work in a group or individually, it can work both ways. I have smaller groups, no more than 6. Oh, that's good. No more than 6. I want to be able to work on those tasks. The data different. Allow me to work one-on-one. Does that make sense? That does. Yep, I know the caseload can increase. I know. Yes, ma'am. Yep, you can do it however you please. So, but make sure when you are doing these task cards, make sure they align directly to what your focus is, what your objective is, and what your target is. That's it. I got you. Educators talking to educators. So we all know. We all know what can happen. So how does this all connect? So it all begins and ends with students. So our students should be our focus when we're planning. Students should be our focus when we're reflecting, because it depends on whether they received the content, whether they were able to incorporate what was going on, or maybe they didn't do it. And that allows us to reflect. So you begin with the project, and then you assess and reflect and see, did it work for my students? And you know, as educators, sometimes we fall, sometimes we rise, but we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. All right, let me see. Jessica said I have pre-K and 18 kids right now. It's one-on-one during center time. Okay, good. Do you have a teacher assistant in there for pre-K? Is it the 18 kids?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Oh,
I was trying to start my video, but it's not working. I do. I have a assistant. We work with one-on-one for our lower students right now, trying to get them up to speed during their center time since they can't work together in small groups. So,
gotcha. Okay. Thank you for sharing, Jessica. And again, my prayers to y'all. Go ahead. Anybody else want to join in?
Well, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
I taught virtual last year and the choice boards were great. But now I'm thinking, would it be crazy to use a choice board for workstations? Like, would that mess up my accountability? Like, you know, how I would have to maybe have like a checkout system or something to know who did what if I did a choice board for workstations. So would it be crazy for me to try to do a choice board for that? Or how would I incorporate choice boards in the classroom?
So with the choice board in the classroom, so with the choice boards, you are still assessing the same concept, but in different ways. So, and eventually they're going to choose what they want to do, but you will have the same thing. You'll be assessing the same thing. So you won't have to say, oh, I can only do this virtually. Just print out the choice board and they're choosing the same exact thing. It won't be crazy.
Oh, okay. So I didn't think about that. So you're saying every activity still is based on that same focus. So even if they don't do all the activities, they still have completed what I need them to. Okay, got you.
And so the way you can get around with that, you could trick them, like you could choose anyone you want. It don't matter. Go ahead. You can whatever you want. Just choose it. It don't matter. It's okay. You don't have to do this one. If you want to do that one, go ahead. And guess what? At the end of the day, you're still doing what you need to do in order to assess what they know or not. Let's see. Question. When thinking about developing relationships with students, how do you find a balance between being approachable or maybe even cooler teacher without crossing into the line of being a pushover or allowing to share a little too much information? I should have had one of my students on live so they could tell y'all about this. I should have recorded their response. So again, when I start off, I always fill it out for them. That every year I do the same exact thing on day one. I give them one thing. I tell them respect is necessary and mutual in order to start a conversation with me. But believe it or not, that's how I start every year the same exact way. If I ask you to do something, if you ask me to do something, think about it. Did you respect me in the way that you wanted to be respected? And so a lot of people say, oh, Miss Betty ain't my favorite teacher. Be like, I'm hard on you. I'm very hard on you. But again, they lack mutual respect, especially in middle school. If they know I respect them, they was like, okay, Miss Betty, I'll calm down today. I'll calm down for you. Because I respect you. They don't say that openly, but you understand if you tell them something, you already know whether they respect you or not. And that's the only thing I tell them. If you want to have a conversation with me, respect. Mutual. But if they go too far, I have to check. That's it. Yeah. But yeah, I wish I had live interaction with some of my kids so they could make y'all laugh. I love choice rules, however, I only done it virtually. I'm going to implement it this week. Okay. Good. Implement it. Good. All right, I know we're getting into the question and answer part of it, but we can continue to go. So again, I like the engagement. Thank y'all so much. This makes it so much easier than me talking to myself. All right, so again, our learning targets were, again, that you all will be able to identify problem-based learning and activities, understand and apply constructivism, and examine and create a student-centered approach. So again, now it's time for us to get to work as we have already talked about different approaches. So let's create a plan as, let me see. Is that Ms. Robinson or Mr. Robinson? The name is kind of confusing me. Let me see. Is that Mr. or Miss? Well, my lovely person that commented, Miss or Mr. Robinson. Okay, Miss. Thank you, Robin. Miss Robinson. And she has already got to the plan. I think she cheated a little bit. Because she saw this presentation and knew I was gonna, oh, Mrs. Okay, I'm sorry, with the marriage. I think she had already peeked to know that I was gonna ask y'all to create a plan to get our children engaged, but that's fine, Ms. Robinson, that you had already got ahead of the game. But again, let's go ahead and create a plan to get our students engaged in thinking and solving real world and mathematical problems, or science problems, or English problems, or any kind of problems that inquire them to think. And as my girl always said, if y'all ever need a booster, please always go back and watch Rita Pearson. She will always give you a highlight of your day. We can do this. We are educators. We are born to make a difference. Because again, we are special people, y'all. We have to be born for this. There's a gift in each one of us to make us a teacher. The common person can do our job. Sometimes we may get a little weary, but just know there is one student, there may be a couple students that you are making a difference for. So continue to push through, just like I had to push through today. We're gonna make a difference. Our kids are gonna be better because we are going to be better and we're learning. All right, Mr. Ashton, Mr. Peterson, I'm going to turn it back over to you so you can facilitate our questions and answers.
All right, so it seems like a lot of folks kind of already got into the question and answer portion already, but I do want to open up the floor if there's anybody who has a question who has not had a chance to ask it already. If you would like to chat me directly, you can do that. If you would like to submit it directly into the chat, you can do that. Or if you're comfortable unmuting and asking Ms. McDaniel out loud, you are welcome to do that as well. And similar to Ms. McDaniel, I come from middle school and I love my interaction and my engagement as well. And so I am not going to allow us to move on until we've heard 3 questions from the audience. So if we could hear from 3 folks, just some things, there's been some really great information shared. I tried to ask some good probing questions throughout, but I'm sure there's some other things that Ms. McDaniel has shared that might have sparked something in this.
Ms. McDaniel, thank you so much for sharing today. I have a question. When you have been presenting and you have been putting all of your lessons together, has there ever been a time, and what did you do if it did happen, where you had to tweak your lesson? What were your steps in tweaking when you actually had something maybe already presented, or already tried it, but it didn't work out as you planned or as you foreseed that it would? What were your steps in or reorganizing it and making the changes? What did you do?
All right, great question. Thank you. So with that happens more often than I would like. So as I plan weekly. So everything I plan is for the week. So for example, if a student doesn't know the concept before I'm giving them the lesson, I have to incorporate a mini lesson. And so I'll just immediately just like, you know what? There's no need for me to proceed. Because if I proceed, they won't know anything. So I'll have to step back. Okay, let me think of what I need to do off the hands. I have to be quick all the time. So let me just go ahead and do this mini lesson. And so my mini lesson is very informal because it's not structured. I want to get to the nitty gritty of what they need to know before I get to the next standard. So sometimes it requires me just to stop, give a mini lesson, and then proceed. It is necessary. That happens more times than I want it to happen. And that's just life. I mean, we can't control it. Mm-hmm.
Ms. McDaniel, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You teach middle school math?
Mm-hmm. 7th grade. Yes, ma'am.
What level do you teach?
7th grade.
Okay. I'm just wondering about pacing. I know I'm elementary, so how do you manage pacing, or just, I guess, from the very beginning, how did you manage it? I mean, I'm special ed, so I know it's a little different for us, but can you give me any ideas or just thoughts on pacing and how to, I guess, where to start with pacing, like pacing your curriculum?
So do you want the professional or the personal answer?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You want a professional or the personal?
Whichever you feel comfortable talking about.
Professionally. Okay, let me put my professional.
Whichever you prefer.
Professionally, I'm gonna give you the professional. Professionally, I'm gonna try to cover
whatever you want to talk about.
to cover as much of my standard as I can. So I'm gonna try to stick to the pacing guide that my district has given us for the beginning of the year. Now let's take this hat off. Personally, with math, 80% of my content gets covered. And most of the time, geometry, statistics is left out. That's the personal side. Professional, I had to tell you the school district side. But personally, 80%. So my thing is, I would rather my students master 80% than me going through 100% and they barely can tell me anything that we learned the year. And it has to be a sacrifice on my side as an educator. It hurts, but again, I'd rather for them to know it better than to move on and be like, okay, I don't know this at all. Because we all know there is going to be some things that we cannot cover through the year. Because we may have a couple of students that don't know the basics, that we may have to teach that mini lesson, that we may have to go back and say, okay, we have to go through this again, Christina.
And I know you're regular ed, but have you had any just insight on special ed? Because all my students are at different levels. So I'm just trying to figure out how to organize that. And I think the task boxes are the best because then I can just give them that and see if they've mastered it. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that was my thought.
It does, but it does require a collaboration from your from the different team levels for the grade levels. So with our special ed department, we're always constantly checking in, or they may be asking for our lesson plan, so I can go back and see what
Yes.
you're doing in order to get that reassurance in that class. Whether it's, do you have core classes where they're just solely in your class, or you have like they're in like one period of your class? You have four classes, whether it's
I think I'll speak with her.
I have reading and math. I have one class of math. Well, two classes for each, reading and math, but then just very small numbers for math. But then I have social, emotional, and behavior. So I need to touch on those too. With not with all students.
Okay, I think I heard.
Yeah, it's different. Not all students have the social, emotional, behavior goals, but that's where it's different. Is I need to touch on all of that.
And so I would say as well, if the pacing of the regular education classes, and if you have pull out, just focus on the areas where they need to be strengthened. So if you take a pre-assessment.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. My computer might be going in and out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so just take a pre-assessment of your students to see, where can I start? So you just need a basic foundation. And once you find that pre-assessment of where you need to start, that helps you build on to the same level. Because even though they are in our regular math classes, even though I have students with special education accommodations, they still need to know the basics. So you build them up from where, I don't know what test y'all usually give our students to make sure you see what their levels are. So using that test, you're building them up. So we're kind of trying to build them up in our regular classroom, and you just start them from where they are in order to, as a supplement.
And then Miss McDaniel, and we'll do this as a kind of a lightning round, these last couple of questions. There's two that are similar, one from Laura and then one from Jennifer. The first, how do you decide what topics you won't cover? And then the second that's similar is there a reason that you cut geometry and then prop and stats?
All right, so with, again, I looked at the pacing guide. So again, I go and see what they have first. And so based on what they have first, next, because with our district, they prioritize what goes first, what's next, and when next. And so every year, geometry is always the last, and statistics is always the last. And when we get to that unit, it's testing time. So I may graze over the topics of what is to expect, such as mean, median, and mode for statistics. I will go into detail with those, but it won't be the full concept, because again, I'm pushing for that time, and that's part of that 20% of the standards that are always tough to cover.
And then our last one, how long does it take? How long do you plan to give your students for one of these projects? And then what do you typically use for your summative and for your formative assessments your formative throughout and then your summative at the end?
So usually if it's that project that I have, we collaborate with the team members on when they're going to cover the topic. So again, usually we try to cover the topics at the same time. So if I'm teaching discount percents, the next teacher, the social studies teacher, is going to be talking about propaganda during that time. So we try to correlate where we are in our standards in order to cover all of this. And so with that project, I used to give them a month in order to complete those assignments. So even if we stop talking about that subject, they're going to still continue to work on that project that we have at hand. And so for the formative and the summative, of course, the overall assessment itself, the overall project at the end will be my grade for the summative assessment. And then for the formative, there will be small quizzes for me as we are in the lesson. So for example, if I'm talking about discount, if I'm talking about taxes, how do you do the taxes? There will be small quizzes in there in order to cooperate it. And so each class period is just not going to be, oh, we're doing a project all day long. We're going to have project work days or problem-based work days here and there. It's not just going to be every day we work on a project. And I did have a specific question as well. And I'll make sure the person that direct messaged me, I'll make sure I send you a direct message back.
All right. Thank you all for your engagement. Thank you all. We were actually just a little bit over time, so thank you all for hanging out with us for the extra couple of minutes. Thank you all for providing a little bit of grace to Ms. McDaniel as she came in from a hectic day of being a 7th grade teacher. And with that, I think we have come to our end. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you again, Ms. McDaniel, for presenting for us this evening. And I hope as we all get closer to October that you all are staying prayed up if that is what you feel you need to do. You are staying well rested, you are staying well fed, and you are staying close to your care community because you will need it as we get into October. So thank you all for your hard work, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
And Ashton, can I ask that you keep the Zoom open so I can respond back to the person's question?
Absolutely.
Before you close it? Okay, thank you.
Is there a survey thing that we're supposed to fill out as well?
I don't have one for you all, so you will be okay.
Okay.
Yep, I'll work it out. That's on me.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.